I'll be talking about blood farming and energy traps in this video. Blood farming means the following. You have a prison camp where you have prisoners that you put under harsh labor. The labor is so intense and so heavy that they die because of it. Now, why did you put them under such a heavy burden? Because you wanted to harvest their energy. It was their human energy you were after. Why? Because there are demonic entities that feed off that energy. That's what blood farming is. So again, blood farming is when you have prisoners that you subject onto harsh labor that drains them mentally, emotionally, and eventually physically. Because of this, they die before their time because they accumulate many sicknesses and diseases and other social dysfunctions because of the hard labor. Meanwhile, the demonic entities, or the gods, as the pagans call them, benefit from it. Because those gods, who aren't really gods, but those entities that the pagans worship need this resource. It's their high. They get high on human life. So they get high on life. So, about blood farming, that is what this system of capitalism comes down to. It may sound very harsh here, but just listen to what I'm saying. Capitalism, just like in blood farming, puts you in a trap. And the trap is that you need to work hard in order to have a good life. And currency, as displayed on the image on the background of this video, is the symbol that you get your relief, that you've made it, or that you're almost there. But what they do in capitalism is you're paid every end of the month. So you go through the rituals to exhaust yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically. You also have to behave, so you invest in that also, and each end of the month you get a compensation. And when you get compensation, you are relaxed for the coming months. But then you have to go again to get another compensation. So you always have the feeling that you're almost there, but you never arrive there. You're not intended to arrive there. You're never meant to reach the place of financial autonomy. You get a token, a sign of financial autonomy, but that's all it is. Real financial autonomy is something that is presented onto you, but the moment you cross for it, you die. How do you die? Because you're trapped in a cycle of always reaching out to it, but you never get it. You only get some crumbs that the system throws at you. But you think those crumbs are worth it, so you keep going, you keep going, keep going. So, capitalism is blood farming. That's what it is. Now, in ancient times, blood farming happened when people kidnapped, when you had those pagan rulers kidnapping children, put them on camps, and they had to work hard until adulthood. That was blood farming then. Now blood farming has extended to almost the whole human population. While there are places where capitalism isn't that deep-rooted, however, it has become the main economic operation of the world. And that's how the human population is drained. That is apart from all the pollution that capitalism brings forth. But now I want to talk about energy traps. Because capitalism, which is global blood farming, can only work with energy traps. Without energy traps, you have no blood farming. So capitalism can only continue as long as there are energy traps. Now, energy traps work like this. I kind of explained it already, but there is an outcome that's presented onto you. And this outcome glitters because let me say, it's paraded by society. It's the outcome everyone talks about. And this outcome, because it's repeated so often, it appears so valuable. Because human beings are mimetic creatures, we imitate one another. There's nothing wrong with us imitating one another. However, the pagan rulers of this world, they use this mimetic nature of humans against us. So they present an outcome onto you, and because others value it, you tend to value it also. Especially when you are a kid or in your teenage or adolescent years, you're quite vulnerable to the mimetism of society. People of all ages are vulnerable to mimetism, to imitation. There's nothing wrong with that. However, the pagan rulers of this world use it against you. So this outcome that's presented onto you through the media, that means so through mainstream media, on billboards out there. There's an advertisement. Advertisement is an expression of pornography. I explained it before, and also by the peers who are influenced by it, often also by your parents. So you begin to think that this outcome is worth it. But this outcome is only worth it in the context of how society conditions you. So the outcome that's presented onto you that glitters is like the end of a tunnel. When you're in a tunnel, it's dark. At the end of it, you can see a light. That's the light of the end of the tunnel. So as long as you're in the tunnel physically, the only perception you have is a light at the end of the tunnel, which is where there's sunlight, because that's the exit of the tunnel. In the tunnel, it's dark. So you want to get out of the tunnel. So society conditions you in a tunnel vision, which will restrain you unnecessarily, which will be toxic for your mind and for your emotional health. And at the same time, society offers you relief from the stress and the tension of that tunnel vision. But that relief is only meant to keep you trapped in that tunnel vision. But because that relief presents itself as an independent value, you think it's an independent value, so you go after it. And while you're going after it, it appears as if you're getting closer and closer to the end of the tunnel. But every time you're close to the light at the end of the tunnel, it is as if the further away the light at the end of the tunnel becomes. So you spend all your effort, mental, emotional, and also physical effort, which translate into social effort, financial effort, into achieving that end. And you get some triggers as if you're almost there, but you're never really there. That's an energy trap. It's a trap. It's actually a mental trap in which, due to your blurred perception, you see things in an inverted manner. So things that are not valuable at all, on the long term at least, you perceive as the only valuable things there are. And things that are truly valuable over a long period of time, you have to see them as a waste of time. So you don't process things clearly. And in this blurred perception, you don't grasp for things that appear to be worth it for the long term. And that's how you remain trapped in the tunnel vision. That's that mentality, and it's this mentality that drains you eventually. And that's how the blood farming happens. So the pagan rulers make sure that through advertisement, through mainstream media, and later also through social media, those energy traps are enforced. Now, some energy traps are inherited culturally. For example, this thing of falling in love and romantic love is something, I'm saying like this, it has existed throughout history, but this mainstream promotion of romantic love and romance is relatively new in human history. In previous centuries, marital relationships were based on social contracts within a community for the long-term benefit of the community. So human sexuality was a tool to preserve the community. It was to be enjoyed, of course, but as long as that enjoyment and the practice serve the well-being of the community. And any violation of this regulation was severely punished so that the human community remained functional. Now there were things like prostitution and child molestation of that, so let me say violations always occurred, and to some extent some violations were tolerated to prevent worse escalations. Nevertheless, homosexuality was submitted to a collective regulation of human energy so the community would not get out of line. So it was unthinkable back then that, for example, a man could see a woman for the first time and he gets this pathological urge to be around her all the time. If that would have happened, people would have, let's say your name is Francois and you lived in the 12th century, or let's say in the year 1120. You lived in a town in the south of France and you see this woman over there, and your body, you feel kind of frightened, at the same time attracted. So actually it's a Python spirit drawing you. You're not aware of it. You don't have any knowledge of spirit world, but you have this urge to be around this woman all the time, to check where she is. In today's world, 2019, would say you're in love. It's something good. Back then, if they notice your behavior, that you can't stop looking, searching for this woman, they would tell you, Francois, you need help. And if you ask, and then you would ask, well, why do I need help? I just feel like I need to be around this woman. She's so special. And they would tell you, Francois. Francois is the French version of Francis, if you didn't know. They would tell you, Francois, you saw her only once. You never spoke to her. You don't know how she is. You don't know her relatives. You don't know the problems they have. You know the ending of the afflictions they have. But yet you have this urge that you have to be around her. It seems like you can't control it. Some demon is wrong you. You need help. And once you are alarmed by this, you look for help. And then afterwards, after you got help, you begin to think clear again. And when you think clear again, you think, huh? How did I got so into this woman just like that? Now, sexual urges existed throughout history because we're human beings, but it was always regulated. Well, at least that was the purpose. There were times in human history that people were so loose, but the community in that area destroyed itself very quickly. So, back then, this whole idea, and as I mentioned before, of just getting a pathological interest in someone would have been dealt with directly. In today's world, though the conditioning of Hollywood, also the mainstream media, especially through movies also, people are conditioned into thinking that they need to find one special individual on the face of the earth that will meet all their needs. And this special individual will make you feel at ease all the time. This special individual will make you feel at home all the time. This special individual understands you all the time. Actually, this special individual is like Jesus Christ, the Messiah, incarnate. So they're looking for a Christ figure to meet all their human needs. And this Christ figure always knows what to do. This Christ figure has a strong affection for them that heals everything. Now, if I explained like this, people would say, Rashid, what you're saying is quite ridiculous. How do you think? How can someone think that you can find one in the human being on the earth? A human being that had to be born, that was born as a baby. A human being that grew up in an environment. A human being that has been conditioned. A human being whose body is mortal. A human being that's vulnerable to the environment. How you can expect that such a creature can meet all your needs and make you at ease all the time? Well, that is what you've been conditioned into by Hollywood, by mainstream media, by the postmodern culture in general. Actually, already since the modern culture in the 20th century. And a lot of folks are conditioned like this and they're not even aware of it. But this is a tunnel vision in itself. Because now You've been looking out to meet this special individual. How do you know if someone is that special individual? You can't. But what if the special individual is all the way in China while you are in Chile, but you have no money to go to China? Are you going to be depressed all your life because you didn't find the special individual? Now I'm going off at it to just show you that this is a trap. So because you are conditioned to find this special individual, because then you'll have a good life. Anytime a Python spirit begins to draw you to someone and you feel a strong urge, you'll think this is the one. And you end up hanging around that individual, and that individual who's under the influence of a demon will respond to your advances, and now you're in what they call a relationship. And in the beginning, it's all like a honeymoon. You can't stay away from one another. You have this high in your brain of being around the individual. You become addicted to the other individual. But as with every addiction, the first high is the best high. All other highs will be lower than the first. So throughout being with the other individual, you want to repeat the first high, the honeymoon phase. But this honeymoon phase will never come again. So now you both have to work hard to maintain interest. And in this working hard, you are operating on tunnel vision. You forget about everyone else. Nobody else matters. Nobody else exists. And you're sucked in. More of human energy is drained, is taken away from you by the demons. And eventually one day you'll find out that your significant other is sleeping with someone else. They're cheating. Now your world has fallen apart. Or the relationship ends and you invested so much of your human capacity into it. So now you have to process that again. And now you need to process and heal from that. So now you're still conditioned into finding the special individuals. Now you continue. Now someone else comes by, this time a narcissist, a malignant narcissist that speaks life into your wounds. So you're attracted to him or her. And now the whole cycle starts again. So it's an energy trap. But because people have been conditioned so much into this energy trap, they don't see it's a trap. Because they think that the regulations in the past concerning human sexuality were oppressive. Now there were oppressive regulations. For example, prostitution, as I mentioned before, has been an institution since ancient times to provoke people into complying with society. So prostitution is an oppressive regulation when it comes to human sexuality. Of course it is. I agree with that. I'm not going to deny it. But just because there were oppressive regulations doesn't mean that the regulations concerning human sexuality are in themselves oppressive. They're not. What the counterculture of the 1960s brought was this concept of free sex or free love, which does not exist. Physically doesn't exist, because human sexual activity always affects your brain and your body. It affects males differently than females, biologically proven, but also on an energetic level, as a spirit being, it affects you. This whole idea of free love, free sex, it's a hoax. But this, let me say, this hoax has this incentive of you being a god, you having a will that everyone else has to find a way to deal with. It has this narcissistic promise that you can will whatever you will and express this will with your body, and everyone just have to find a way to deal with it. There's incentive behind this idea, or behind this hoax of free love and free sex. And people that aren't renewed in their mind often fall for this trap, because it promises relief from all toxic restrictions. The toxic restrictions society forces on you. But what people don't realize is that this free love or free sex hoax traps you in the oppressive regulation of society, but it traps you in a way you don't realize. If you have an addiction that obviously costs you your health, you would find a way to stop with it. But if you have an addiction that seems to benefit you on the short term, you don't think you need help. You remain in the tunnel vision, and this energy trap drains you. And that's how the blood farming continues. Why do you think that this hoax of free love and romantic love go hand in hand? But why do you think that advertisers use this incentive of free sex, free love, and of romantic attraction? It's not natural attraction, it's romantic attraction. It's conditioned into you by Rome, by the patriarchy. Why do you think they use it so often? Because that is the main energetic trap that keeps capitalism going. Folks spend a lot of financial resources in finding and maintaining Mr. Right or Miss Right. Miss or Right for the men, Mrs. Right for the females. Well, even that they overthrown, because now you have male on male romance and female romance. And in some places they promote female on female romance a lot. They throw it into your face. Male on male also, but people tend to be aggressive against that. The effort spent on finding the right one is one of the key motivators that keep people trapped in this global blood farming that's called capitalism. Think about it. If you don't have the glitter, folks won't notice you. If you don't have the acceptance, because eventually people are attracted to the one society conditions them into most of the time. So if you don't have the glitter, the capitalism promotes, then after you won't find the other. So people want to be part of society, to be accepted, so they have access to jobs, so they can have the financial resources to make themselves presentable, to find the right one. The core human need for significance is used against human beings. That's how it goes in blood farming. Now, is the hoax of free love, free sex, and also the hoax of romantic love, are those two hoaxes the only energetic traps? Of course not. There are many more. Another energetic trap is the trap of self-respect. It centers around the self, around self-preservation. It comes down to the following. You're a vulnerable being. As a vulnerable being, folks can take advantage of you. So to prevent folks from taking advantage of you, you need to force people to value you. And how do you force them to value you? By either becoming relevant to them, that's by seeking relief in pursuing acceptance by society. And the other part is to become a threat onto others, so others know that they need to consider you. In both cases, you are codependent. But you think that once you get the validation or the so-called respect, you are safe. But you're not. I said this before, that when you're in tunnel vision, you can't think straight, you can't think clear. So this whole idea of self-respect, let's see how it works out in practice. In practice, when you demand acknowledgement from others, you need to back up this demand with consequences, or else folks won't give into it. So now you need to find a way to exploit the vulnerabilities of someone else to force them to acknowledge you. When parents do this to their little children all the time, the child needs to have food, water, clothes, the child can't do anything on his own. The child wants to avoid pain, so use the threat of emotional or physical pain on the child to make the child comply, to make the child acknowledge your will. When your will is frustrated, you release frustration on the kid, not too much so that the kid doesn't die and you go to jail, but you release your frustration on the kid so the kid knows something bad happens when mom or dad doesn't have his way. The kid is conditioned that that's how it goes, so it does the same with peers. And if the kid has been harmed by it, it may act it out later in the form of criminality, or by joining cults, or by becoming an oppressive boss at the workplace. So this whole idea of self-respect, it sounds very good, but when you examine it, first of all, it denies Christ because you seek value in other human beings. Secondly, you are charged with having to control others, control how others perceive you, because people value you often depends on how they perceive you. So now you need to manage manage the data that's out there about you. That's where the whole hoax of privacy comes in. So now you become a controller, and you have a full-time job to control how others perceive you. And this full-time job doesn't really pay off. It's at your expense. Now look, when it comes to other people, how they perceive you or think about you is relevant because that's how they're going to treat you. So how others think about you has its relevance, but it doesn't have its supreme relevance. And with some folks, it goes so far that how others think about them has the supreme relevance in their lives. It shouldn't be like that. Now, how others think is relevant, but it's not the main relevance. You shouldn't be trapped by how others think about you, but it doesn't mean that how others think is completely irrelevant. Of course, you consider others and their interests, but not at the expense of your long-term well-being. But your own long-term well-being is often lost. It's often out of sight when you're in a tunnel vision. You forget about it because you only focus on what's at the end of the tunnel. The end of the tunnel that you'll never reach on the terms that you've been conditioned into. You need to be delivered from a tunnel vision. So energy traps, recognize them. Recognize them early on. That's the best thing to do. Be at peace.